I'm a 27-year-old man, and my fiancée GC is a 26-year-old woman. Let's call her Lisa. My father is 52 years old. Let's call him Brian. My mother is 50 years old. Let's call her Rachel. Like many who've had something like this happen, I never thought it would happen to me, but here we are. I've never used Reddit, but I've seen stories from there on TikTok, so I thought I'd give this a shot for any advice you all could give me. From listening to some other stories, you all like backstories. I'll try to be as clear and precise as I can, but it's only been a week, so if I start to lose it during the telling of this, I'm sorry. Lisa and I met in her freshman year of college. We were both dorming in the same building where we eventually met. We later found out we lived 2 towns away from each other, so whenever we went home, I let her drive with me. It only added like 20 minutes, so it was no big deal. After multiple trips and hanging out at school, we started to date. I have a close-knit family, as did she, so we told our families right away. I had met hers plenty of times when dropping her off, but it was nothing more than an introduction and exchanging pleasantries. Both of our families accepted each other with open arms, and our relationship grew. I was a year ahead of her, so when I graduated, I went home, where I was offered a good job with great pay. I visited her at school whenever I got the chance, and whenever she came home, we would make time for each other. After she graduated, she moved in with me as both of our jobs were in the city near where we grew up. Like me, she was offered a position at the company she works at now with great pay. After living together for about 3 years, I proposed, and we have been planning our wedding since. Now onto the part you're all reading for. Looking back, there were plenty of things I overlooked that I just wrote off, thinking my father was just trying to welcome my ex into our family. Things like my father calling her all the time, and if I was around, they would just tell me they were talking about the upcoming family party or something along those lines. One time Lisa was in the shower and her phone rang. I saw it was my dad, so I answered. When he realized it was me, he sounded both upset and surprised that I picked up. I then asked what was up. He responded that he wanted to talk to Lisa about my mother's birthday that was in a week, and after a minute, we ended the call. Even typing this out now, I feel like an idiot for not seeing it sooner. On the day I found out, it was like any other day. Lisa had Thursdays off, so she made breakfast for both of us. When I set out for work, she gave me a kiss and told me to have a great day. During my drive to work, I realized I had forgotten some paperwork I would need for a meeting I had at 3 p.m. I shrugged it off and told myself I would just go home at lunch to get it. Lisa texted me throughout the day, talking about all the casual stuff a couple talks about, like, "What do you want for dinner? I did the laundry. Do you want me to hang it up for you? Blah, blah, blah." I didn't think it necessary to text her I was coming home for lunch, so when it came around, I just left work and went home. When I got home, I noticed a car that looked like my father's in our parking lot, but I didn't think anything of it and just parked and went into our building. When I opened the door, I was met with a scene out of a movie where a man comes home early and catches his spouse cheating, such a cliche. There was a trail of clothes, both his and hers, leading to my bedroom, and the sound of faint moans echoed through my apartment. I stood at the door in utter shock. My brain was a mix of rage, sadness, and disgust, but if you were a fly on my wall, you would see what looked like a statue. I just couldn't move. When I finally snapped to, not knowing how much time had passed, I took out my phone to record. I picked up all the clothes that were on the floor and threw them into the hall of the building. After, I filmed the walk to my bedroom. The door was open. I stood in the doorway filming for about a minute, then flipped on the lights. They both jumped at the sudden light and looked at me. To my utter shock, it was my father in the bed with her. After the initial stun, my father noticed I was recording and started to panic, trying to find anything to cover himself and telling me to stop recording. He found a towel and wrapped it around himself and started to walk toward me. I told him, "If you don't want to get hurt, stop coming to me." He either didn't care or didn't hear me and reached for my phone. I hit him square on the jaw. His head bounced off the door and he slumped to the ground. Lisa shrieked. I aimed the camera at Lisa and said, "Concerned about your fuck buddy, but nothing to say to your fiancée GC?" My father woke up after about a minute nap, and I told them, "I just needed to come pick something up for work, so I'm heading back now. If either of you pieces of shit are here when I get back, I'll send this video to everyone you know." I ended the video, looked at my dad, who was still coming to, and said, "You're dead to me. You're no longer my father, but you might want to go home and talk to Mom because I'll be talking to her very soon." I sat in my car for a while until one of the bosses at work called to ask where I was. I told her I was on my way back right now. When I got to her office to hand her the paperwork, I must have looked awful because she started asking what was wrong with me. I told her it was nothing and I'd be okay. I could see her scanning me up and down, and she noticed some blood on my collar and stood up, rushed to me and said, "You're bleeding." I looked down and said it was my father's. She looked confused, so I pulled out my phone and showed her the video. She watched it in its entirety. She was introduced to Lisa a few times, but never my father. She sat there silent for a moment until it finally clicked that my fiancée was cheating on me. But not only was she cheating, it was with my father. She asked if there was anything she could do, suggesting I take some time off, but I told her I can't go back there right now, that I just need a minute, and I'd be fine for the meeting, and I have another shirt in my office. The meeting went over fine. I put on a smile for everyone like nothing had happened. My boss came up to me after the meeting and asked how I could do that, but I just said I don't know and went to my office. I then came home and I was alone for the first time in a very long time. After I wrote down all that happened, I closed my computer and kind of fell into a depression. After I posted, it hit me like a train. To the ones who think it's fake, I wish I was this creative. I'd write books instead of working a 9-5. I'll try to reply more on this post. I just logged back on, and it was honestly too much to try and reply to every comment. Just know I read through most of them, and I truly appreciate everyone's inputs, both negative and positive. So the day after I posted, I tried to get into contact with my mother, but none of my calls were connecting. I wanted to see if she would get lunch with me, and I'd tell her everything. After about a dozen tries, I decided to get into my car and go to my mother's house. She needed to know what happened as soon as possible, even if talking about it was going to make it hurt all over again. During the drive, I thought about what I would say and how I would say it. That made me start to panic. I had to pull over twice to throw up. It's not every day you have to tell your mom that her husband is screwing your fiancée. I pulled into the driveway and sat in my car for a moment to calm down and gather my thoughts. I was in my car for a few minutes when my mother threw her front door open, so I stepped out of my car. She started cursing at me, saying how dare I come to her home after I hit my father for trying to break up a fight between Lisa and me. She called me every name in the book and called me an abuser. She told me I needed to leave since Lisa isn't ready to forgive me yet, and that if she's smart, she hopefully never will. Yes, apparently my father took Lisa to my family's home and told my mom that Lisa and I argued, and when my father tried to stop it, I hit him. She continued on for a while until I finally snapped and said, "Really, Mom? Because your husband is fucking my fiancée. That's why I hit him. And if you can't take my word for it, I have a video I'll send to you. But because my own mother can talk to me like this, don't expect to see me again. I don't want to hear your apology when you finally figure out that you're just as shit of a mom as my piece of shit father." Her face dropped. She looked like what I must have looked like when I first walked into my apartment and caught them. I pulled out my phone and sent her the video. My mom took hers out and turned it on. She pulled up the video and watched up until the part where I turn on the light. She then put her phone down. She looked up at me, but I turned and went into my car. I backed out of her driveway. I looked at her before I took off, and she was in tears. My heart felt for her, but too much was said during that fight for me to pull back in and forgive her. When I got home, I started clearing everything out of my apartment that had to do with Lisa or my family. I boxed all of Lisa's things up and put them next to the front door. Legally, this has been her place of residence, so I can't technically kick her out. Her name isn't on the lease. Also, she's the type of person who shies away from conflict. And if she returns other than to pick her things up, there will be plenty of conflict. Anything that had to do with my parents, I boxed up and put into storage. Like I said in my first post, we were a very close family, but I've never had a problem cutting toxic people out of my life. I texted Lisa's parents and told them I was calling off the engagement and that she'd been cheating on me. I thanked them for everything they've done for me. Our relationship was still building, but they were kind and supportive of me, so this just added more hurt to the mix. I finished by asking if they would come to pick up all of her belongings. I haven't gotten a response from them yet, but I'm hoping they come to grab her things, so Lisa doesn't have a reason to come back here. I'm sorry I haven't updated in a while. I wish I could say I'm doing great, but that would be a lie. Everything hits me in waves. I go from just being numb to boiling with rage. I haven't had a happy moment since I found out. Other than a few friends, I don't really have anyone in real life, especially since my family turned out to be shit. Quite a few things happened since I posted last. It's been about a month, so this update will tell all that's been going on. After my last post, I decided to get the ball rolling on everything that needed to be done, like getting tested, finding a therapist, moving, and of course, buying a new bed. I started by calling my doctor's office, telling them I needed to get tested and to refer me to a therapist. I had my first appointment with a therapist 2 weeks ago, and we decided to continue once a week. I also got tested last week, but it'll be another week or so until I get the results, cross your fingers for me. I got in touch with a real estate agent friend of mine, and he sent me a ton of listings. I decided on a refurbished cabin on the outskirts of my city. I finished moving 2 days ago. When I finished moving, I called Lisa's parents. When they picked up, I told them I moved out, and Lisa has still yet to pick up her things, and that the landlord will start showing the apartment in a few days. So someone better pick her things up before the landlord throws them out. That must have lit a fire under them, because the next day, my former landlord texted me, thanking me for getting the apartment emptied out. No one knows where I live now, other than the friend who set me up with this place, so I know Lisa or my parents won't be dropping by. The only thing that sucks about this place is I traded a 10-minute walk to work for a 45-minute drive. My phone has been blowing up with texts and calls from Lisa, both my parents and some of my friends, but I have no interest in talking to anyone other than my therapist. At work, I've been a ghost. I go in, get my work done, and leave. On the rare occasion I have to talk to someone, I put on my fake smile and pretend everything is okay. My boss from my previous post has been trying to check in on me more, but I don't really tell her anything either. I just tell her I appreciate it, but I'll be okay. Truth is, I don't know if I'll be okay. I get that time heals and all, but I feel like that's only relevant when you're dealing with one issue, not when you lose who you thought were the 3 closest people in your life, all at once. A huge part of me died, and there's no chance of resuscitating it. The meetings with my therapist are going well, I suppose. I've never done therapy before, so I have no reference on what good therapy is. We do get along all right, and she really seems genuine in wanting to help. The first session was us getting to know each other and delving into what brings me to her. Nothing in depth, but me just telling her what happened in my own words. The second session, we went a bit deeper. She asked me about the relationship I had with my parents. I told her up until now, it was great. We talked often and always communicated well when something was wrong, and I grew up in a great home, but that all means nothing now. She asked why I cut my mother out of my life. I told her she said things to me I wouldn't say to someone I despised, then told her there's no way she can come back from that. At the end of our last session, I gave her the link to my page on here, so she can read more about how I feel and what's going on in my head. I feel like it's easier to type things out than it is to speak it. So if you're reading this, hi doc. For now, I'm still miserable. I thought I'd be okay by now, not necessarily happy, but okay. I know some of it is my own fault for not communicating with my friends, but when I think about responding to them, it just seems so exhausting. I know they'll want to get together or come to my new place, but I just don't have the energy to be around them. Until I do, I'll work, go to my appointments, and sit on my back deck sipping on some bottom-shelf whiskey and try to enjoy this beautiful view. I haven't hunted since high school, so maybe I'll take that up again, now that I can hunt from my back porch. After my last post, I was nowhere near okay, so I pulled back from everything. I secluded myself in order to heal and cope with what is now my life. I want you to know every comment and message didn't fall on deaf ears. I took all of your positive feedback and advice and worked through my problems. So, to the people who've supported me through this, truly thank you. I can't stress it enough. When I was at the lowest I've ever been, it was internet strangers that were there for me. So again, thank you all. In my last post, I was doing things like getting tested for STDs and trying to restart my life. I'm happy to inform you all I am clean and couldn't be more relieved. I am fully moved into my new place. When I told you all about my new place, I said it was a refurbished cabin. Well, I might have been a little generous. It was refurbished almost 25. 30 years ago, so it was a bit dated. Well, with all my newfound free time, I decided to actually refurbish it, and all that's left to do is paint the guest room I turned into an office. The only thing I didn't do myself was the electric and plumbing, because I have no clue how to do it, and have zero interest in being shocked or putting my hand in a shit-covered pipe. Doing all the work has been incredibly stress-releasing and has helped me clear my head. I still see my therapist once a week. To all those who suggested it, you probably saved my life, so thank you. Being able to vent, get my frustrations out, and get the advice I need has been better than anything in my life, past or present. I'm still working at the same company. I've become more open with some of my coworkers that I'm closer with, and my boss from my previous post due to the advice from my therapist. Also, due to her and some of your advice, I've reached out to my friends and have slowly been reintegrating into the group again. Now on to the update with what's been going on between my family and ex. I decided I was ready to have a talk with my mother, so a little over a month ago, I unblocked her on my phone and reached out. I called, and almost instantly she picked up the phone. I could tell through the tone of her voice she was panicking. Eventually, after reassuring her it was me, I told her we should meet and talk. She agreed, and a day later we met at a diner near her house. She was there before I was, and when she saw me, she started quietly sobbing. When I sat, she apologized over and over again, telling me she could only take their word because she never thought them getting together would ever happen. I told her while I appreciate her apology, the things she said to me were despicable and something no mother should ever say to their child, and it showed me exactly what she thought of me. She cried harder and promised it's not true, that when she was told I hit my father for no reason, she was so angry, and when I showed up to the house, she just let her anger take over. Not wanting to go back and forth with her, I decided to move on. I said, "Speaking of that piece of shit, what have you decided to do with him?" She told me they've been separated. She just kicked him out, since the day after I sent her the video, and she immediately found a lawyer. Then we moved on to my ex. She said that when I pulled away, she went back into the house and threw them both out. She was too disgusted to look at them. We talked for about an hour in total, and before I left, I told her I was in a dark point in my life, and because of the things she said to me, I didn't have my mother when I needed her, and because of that, I don't know if I could have her in my life. I then told her I'm willing to work on my relationship with her, but it will be at my pace. She stopped me before I could leave and told me she has to tell me something important. I sat back down, and she said Lisa is pregnant. Lisa apparently showed up to the house and told my mom. She said she didn't know if it's mine or my father's. Lisa asked if I had been in touch so she could let me know. Obviously she hasn't, so my mom just sent her on her way. Well, that's about it for the update. I have a lot on my mind, not sure what to do or feel. Thank you for listening. This was just the first story. Be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments. Now, get ready for a short but awesome story. My wife, 42, and I, 44, have been married for 19 years. We have been together for 25 years. We have 3 great kids under the age of 14. In 2015, she lost her mother to cancer, and in 2016, her father to cancer. This sent her into a deep depression. For the following 2 years, I took care of the kids while she worked. The dead bedroom starts during this time. Nothing makes her happy. Because she doesn't talk to me, I start playing video games when the kids go to bed. After 2 years, she starts coming out of her depression. She talks more and wants to do stuff with the family. We start being physical again. This went on for a year, then I lost my father. This sent me into a depression because we were very close. Like my wife, I closed myself off to her. I started playing video games more and ignored my wife. I never stopped saying I love you or giving hugs or taking her out. We started sleeping in different rooms because our son had a medical condition where we had to keep an eye on him at night, so I slept in his room. I moved my Xbox in there and played video games for a couple of hours until I fell asleep. Then COVID happens. My kid's school goes remote, and my wife started working from home. My wife's job required her to start looking for supplies to reopen her business when the restrictions stopped. She starts working closely with another member of her company. After a few months, she starts being distant and stops communicating with me. I try to keep telling her I love her and buy small gifts to show my love and appreciation. We decided that for the 2020 to 2021 school year, we would keep our kids at home to remote learn, because our son had a serious medical condition. I was so busy with the kids' school that I really didn't notice the distance getting worse until much later. The dead bedroom starts again. Then in the summer of 2021, I start to work for Lyft because we needed extra money. I worked on the days she worked from home so she could be close to our son's school. In the fall of 2021, I picked up this lady from the airport and drove her to her hotel downtown. During this ride, she talked to her female friend on the phone about meeting her affair partner to have sex because they were both in town for business. She said her husband was at home with the kids and was playing video games. They hadn't had sex in over a year. He was too busy to know she was cheating. I started thinking this sounded like us, so I started being more affectionate and more loving. I'm already a loving and affectionate person. Nothing changed. The distance was getting worse. I wrote a letter telling her I love her and that I know there is distance between us. I want to work it out, but she has to be willing to work on us. She said she would try to be better. For the next year, she showed hardly any affection and didn't want sex because her depression pills gave her no sex drive. We barely held hands, and she didn't say she loved me unless I said it first. When we were in the car together, she slept so she didn't have to talk. D-Day was May 4th of this year. My wife went into the office. I went to work, and I was texting her during the day with no response. Then she finally called me, and I told her I had been texting her all day. She told me she never got my text because of the signal in her office. She has Google Chat, so I messaged her there. It would show up on her work computer. No responses. She got home, and after we put the kids to sleep, she took a shower. This is where I finally broke down and checked her phone. Now, May 4th is a big Star Wars day. May 4th be with you. So I checked her texts from me, and it was true she didn't get them until she left the office. I checked Google Chat. This is where I found her cheating. She woke up that day and messaged him on Google Chat all the May 4th gifts. I am a Star Wars fan also. Did I get one? Absolutely not. So I checked all their messages, and the affair had been going on for almost 3 years. There were tons of I miss yous and I love yous. I felt so stupid. I was completely devastated. This guy moved to Kansas in 2020, but comes into the office 1 week a month, since he works remote the other weeks. I guess when they would have Zoom meetings with each other to get their business open, he began to flirt. In the past, guys would flirt with her, and she would shut them down. This guy wasn't as handsome as me. I'm not a 10. I have a little dad bod. Maybe I'm a 6 or 7, and he was a 4. She began to flirt back. Then they would go to lunch together. Then the lunches turned into going to his hotel room for lunchtime sex, and she would tell me she had to work late to have more sex. I even saw a text to her friend saying the sex wasn't better. She just craved the attention. So I screenshotted everything to myself. I didn't say anything because I was having surgery in the summer and needed her help. After surgery, we decided to move closer to family. She barely helped me look for houses. I checked her phone again in October. I guess the relationship came to an end in June before my surgery. He was mad that she was taking time to care for me and the kids. I was wondering why she became more affectionate and loving and wanting to have sex with me after I healed. Last week, we got into a huge argument because she started being distant and wasn't communicating again. So I yelled and told her I knew she cheated with a coworker. She denied it and said I was overreacting. Then I shoved the evidence in her face. Then she stopped yelling and putting me down and started crying. I just left and went to my sister's house. I came back home to be with the kids for Christmas. Then I will leave again. I told her I'm filing for divorce after the new year. She cried and asked who will drive her to work and pick her up. Who will help her with the kids? I told her to ask her affair partner. Then she started crying more, saying we can work it out and do marriage counseling. I will seek full custody when I file the divorce paperwork. Also alimony and child support. 25 years I feel is wasted.